I'll probably put a little bit of context in it. First of all, thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for everyone being here. Around about 2017, we created a position within Defence, and that was at the start of the estate regeneration program, which was supposed to be around that $3.5 billion investment. And at the time, we realized that basically Defence had nothing. Now, I would want to just also clarify one point. What John said is not exactly correct. The whole of Defence may have a whole lot of people. I have 4. That is it. That's my entire team. So we run estate and infrastructure, and I'm the deputy director for that, but not for the entire Defence. So that's just something completely different. At the time, we basically said to a contractor, you know how to do health and safety, sign on the dotted line, here's the contract, and you do health and safety. And we realized that that's not going to work. First of all, the Act changed. Not that the old Act did not say kind of the same thing, but that changed, and then we had this massive lot of money coming on. How would we manage the contractors and keep people safe? So we looked at everything, sat down, decided to write our own system, simply because Defence is pretty unique in what we do, how we do things. There's policies and directives and all kinds of things in the background. Plus then there's the contractor management piece, and there's civilians working there, and there's uniformed people working there. How do we get this thing working? And so we got into what we call CHASNZ, the Construction, Health, Environment and Safety Specification. So what I'll do is I'll briefly just talk through this and explain where it all started and how we've kind of put it together. First of all, we've kind of divided it into those 4 pillars, making sure that we've got clear expectations right at the start, and then moving on to clear processes for our contractors, clear monitoring, and then clear responses when and if things do go wrong. So that's kind of what we built it on. We looked at the Chief of Defence's health and safety statement, which we then, from a head of DEI perspective, we drafted the head of DEI's health and safety statement sitting underneath the CDF statement, making sure that these 2 things align, because we would be engaging contractors directly, and that is exactly the problem that we still currently have in a way. 200 meters away, Army may have engaged the same contractor, not under this framework, nothing, no framework. So, and I've pointed that out to the Exec Health and Safety Committee a couple of years ago. So we came up with this, and we're still working on getting that balance right. So we then developed CHASNZ, the Construction, Health, Environment and Safety Specifications Framework. Basically two large volumes. Volume 1 is all the policy specifications, all of the detail. Volume 2, more around processes, flow diagrams, that kind of thing. Inductions, we run 3, well, not us, but all in all, we run 3 inductions. So we've got the overarching DEI health and safety induction. Then there's the camp and base induction, where the Army or Air Force or Navy representative run those, and sometimes we do it on their behalf, where they say, this is where you can park, that's where you can drive, this is where you cannot go, kind of thing. And then we've got the main contractor who does the induction for their people and their subcontractors. So I'll get into more of the detail and how this whole thing fits together in a short while. We also have a stop work authority. Now, you could say, but the Act already says that. We just wanted to make it quite obvious that anyone who would find something wrong on a site could stop a job. And it's not necessarily to pull out the yellow card and go, hey, you have to stop the job. No, it's just a bit of a reminder under that specific section of the Act. In terms of clear processes, We have a very specific permit to work system. We identified 14 high-risk work types that we do. We employed within each of the camps and bases what we call a DOC, a Defense Officer of Compliance, and they are basically doing all of the documentation for the contractors. So they manage the system, they don't prescribe, they make sure that the JSAs are aligned, that the scope of work is not for a different job, that there's no duplication of documentation. 2 weeks ago we worked on a 1-story building. Now we work on a 3-story building, but the JSA still looks exactly the same. So they kind of run through that, and I'm pretty sure you've seen that many times. So lots of duplication sometimes. What we do is that, yes, there is some parts that we say this is not negotiable, and one of those is our job safety analysis, but only related to permitted work, nothing else. Because we want to be able to compare apples with apples. There's so many different JSAs out there, and then it doesn't meet the criteria, it doesn't address all of what we want to see. So we make sure that when there's a permit, it's our JSA, and then we know exactly what to expect, what to work off. The one thing that is pretty unique that we also do is we've got a SPA request. Now you'll see when we go through, there's all these fancy and funny abbreviations and stuff. It's literally like a SPA. We just relax things. So if a contractor is a specialist, say in worker height, and we have our requirements in CHASNZ and it says do X, Y, and Z, and they go, well, we do that, but we also do A, B, and C. And we would want to do it this way, and we go, great, that meets or exceeds the expectations of defense. Fill in the SPA request, we relax the rule, and you carry on. So you carry the risk. No problem with that. Underneath that little diagram there, we have one construction safety management plan. So we engage with the main contractor, and I'm just jumping ahead in my mind to the next slide, or maybe 2 or so slides forward. Already at design stage, and just after that, we start working with the contractors. But there's only one construction safety management plan that we put in place with the main contractor. No other SSSPs, not accepted. All of the others work under a JSA or a SWIMS or some kind of other procedure, but not a construction safety management plan. Why? Because we want the main contractor to manage their subcontractors, and we evaluate them on the performance of their subcontractors. So that makes them responsible, so they don't go, oh, well, we had nothing to do with it. No, you did, because it's your subcontractor. You decided to bring that subcontractor on board. So how are you managing your subcontractor? So effectively, we've got one plan that everyone follows. When we started, we had on one job like 15 different SSSPs. None of them would say the same thing. So it's absolute chaos. We do work with anything from 800 to 1,400 contractors. So it's a lot. We can't deal with that many different SSSPs and stuff. It's just not viable. So in terms of clear monitoring, we've got a whole heap of pre-made up inspection checklists. Those are all available to our contractors. They are in an electronic format or hard copy. It does not matter. They're on ArcGIS as well. We've put them up there. We've then got what we call JAS, a Joint Assurance Reporting System. So that's where, remember, within defense, it's a unique system. We've got this firewall that contractors just can't access. In the past, if an event would occur, a contractor would have to engage with someone in uniform or someone with access to the internal system to then upload the event. So we hardly ever saw those events. It's just too hard. They would upload it potentially in their own system, but there's no visibility for us. So we built jars, really cheap, really simple, but effective. Not fantastic. Don't for one instance think it's fantastic. It's not. The fence has got a little budget like this, and we built it according to that. But it's working like a bomb. Contractors can access it. It comes up on my phone, and I see there was an event, and I go, yep, this is minor. Oh, we need to give them a call and find out about this. Really simple and easy. So hazards are uploaded in there. Their subcontractors' names are uploaded in there. There's a whole heap of information that we get through those. But it also gives us access to those events, and then we can combine that plus the internal systems events, provide that to the leadership team and the Exec Health and Safety Committee, and we've got a global picture of what happened, which in the past we did not have. Then there's registers, obviously, training registers or vehicle registers, that kind of thing. There's kind of templates for everything. And then the other bit that we do, we've got a KPI system that we call CHIPS. See, chips and fish. We wanted to call the system at some point fish. I won't go into that, elaborate on that anymore. But the chips is just to, you do something, you get the chips. So, not the fish. So those we have built, and I'm just going to refer to some of the notes, making sure that I don't miss out on something. ISO 45001, the procurement, government procurement guidelines, CHES obviously, legislation, some of the standards as well, contractor management requirements, and then also there's like NZDF PCBU requirements that sit separate. So we built all of that into that chip system. So that's a scoring system where we, on a monthly basis, see what the contractor performance look like, and then we report upwards to the leadership team. Now, in the beginning, at the start of all of this, contractors were quite apprehensive and went, oh, we shouldn't tell you what we did. The catch is that we work with the contractor right from the start, and you'll see that on some of the next slides. So it's an open and honest conversation that we have. It's not a stick that we use. It's how can we improve this? And how can we help as defense to get them on track? Because we only have so many contractors. We don't have more. So we need to make sure that we get them up to speed so they can come back and keep working for us. There's money coming across. There's a cake and everybody wants their piece of the cake. So we've got the chip scoring. That's part of the clear monitoring. Then really simple at the end. If something goes wrong, we've got an incident management system, a whole process that says this has to be notified or reported through this person. These are the people that will be involved, and so on and so on. We've got safety in design or safety by design. We've got tender processes. We run hazard workshops, so HazID workshops with our contractors. Main contractor plus the, shall I call them, the most important subcontractors at the start, the one with the biggest influence. We have them all in a room. We run those workshops, and I'll just come back to this when we're on to the next slide or a couple of slides onwards. And then there's just the whole integration of this thing, and that's probably what's taken us the longest. So CHES got rolled out on the 8th of December 2020. Then it was part of COVID was in there, and it was a start-stop implementation, which took a lot longer than what we anticipated. But in the end, probably from about July, August 21, that's when we started gaining momentum and things just started happening. We brought the 9 defense officers of compliance on board. That was a massive process, simply because of funding and who they should report to. So they do not report to me or to the health and safety team. They report to the estate delivery directors, which is a little bit of a disconnect sometimes, but that's the way that it has been set up. And then on the other side of the fence, with specifically facilities maintenance and management, we've got health and safety advisors that work really closely with these defense officers of compliance and with my health and safety team. So I have 4 regional health and safety specialists, one in each region, one in northern, one in southern down in Christchurch, one in central, and one sitting at Defence House helping out, say at Linton or at Ohakia or at Waihuru, just depending on what the workload looks like. And that's in a nutshell, that is CHASNZ. Has anyone, and I'm guessing that some of you have been working under CHASNZ for defense or have at least heard of it? Yep, a couple of hands. Cool. So what we struggled with in the beginning is the NZDF is a client PCBU. But it's not as simple as that. There's all these responsibilities and stuff that sit there. But we have contractors that we engage. And it's about those communication bits and pieces that need to happen between us and the contractors, but also between the different contractors as we go. So all of them have the same kind of responsibilities because they're all PCBUs in their own right. And that, you'll see that at the very last slide, is one of our massive issues, because we have small contractors and large contractors with really elaborate and very good health and safety systems, and we've got the little ones with almost nothing, but they all work for defense at some point in time. And then we have multiple contractors on multiple sites, and so it does become messy when it starts looking like this. They engage subcontractors and then subcontractors, and that's where we lose control completely, because we don't know what's happening. That's what happened in the past. But just to add to that mix, we have Army, Air Force, and Navy. They all see health and safety different, not the same. So, huge challenge. And then we've got 9 camps and bases, and they all have their own idea how to run health and safety. So, simple example, maybe at one camp and base, potentially it may be that the estate deputy director says, well, we don't deal with this particular aspect of a contractor. But at another camp and base, that's entertained. And then the contractor, it's the same contractor, maybe Hawkins working here, Hawkins working here, and they go, why there but not here? And we sit in the middle and we go, we don't know. We have to sort this out. So in terms of consistency and application of CHASNZ, it becomes massively challenging. That consistency is really important. It does not matter what the contractor size is, or the contract size, or how much money the contractor has. That doesn't matter. It has to be consistent, because otherwise things will simply just fall over. So there's a bit of a timeline that I've just put together on how CHASNZ works. So under most of our contracts work and fall under the 3910 standard. And under the 3910 standard, that white part up there, that's what it looked like in the past. Pretty disconnected. The safety by design part would basically stop at tender stage, and then we engage the contractor, but this is now sitting on a desk somewhere, potentially. And then we work with the contractor, and once the build is done, or the refurbishment, or whatever it is, then that part is put on the shelf, and then maintenance and management starts. And it's all disconnected. So we went, that is not helpful at all. So quite often we would find that under the 3910, the requirement was, and potentially still is, that from signing to being on site 10 days to produce all of the documents. It's an impossible situation. You'll probably get a lot of copy and paste. And we went, that can't work. It does not work for us. So we start literally 12 weeks out before the contractor comes to site. We start working with them, working on drafting and putting their CSMP together, traffic management plans, quality management plans, environmental management plans, all of those. Then the safety by design part starts flowing through as well. We make sure that we incorporate that. So when we get to things like the hazard workshops that's up there, we run the first hazard workshop 8 weeks out, and then they go back to the drawing board, and then 3 weeks out we run the second one on large projects, not on every project. It's not done on every project. We just scale it. So after that, it's basically approval of all those different plans and doing the final tweaks and so forth. Then we do a sanity check, that operational readiness check at the end, before they come on site, and then we go, cool, all the documentation are in place, let's go. Let's do the job. So it's a really open and transparent process. So those numbers in front, that's just the chapters in the CHASNZ volumes. It makes it really simple. We've been told that CHASNZ is a really difficult and hard document and process to follow. I have a different opinion. It's not complex, it's comprehensive. When we looked at the development of CHASNZ in the beginning, we realized that we've got the act and the regulations and all the legal stuff up here. And then we've got the contractors doing the job down here. And there's different interpretations on what exactly to do with what's written up here. And CHASNZ is that part in the middle. So we've done a whole lot of research, court cases. What does the law say in, say, Australia or in the UK or in Canada? We looked at a lot of court cases within New Zealand, and where it would be really simple and obvious that, yes, this would be the outcome, the court decided, no, this is the outcome. And we went, okay, so that changes the perspective. What do we do to avoid that? Because ultimately, it's not about not ending up in court. It's about making sure people are safe, first of all. But ultimately, my job is also to keep CDF away from the court, and making sure that everyone is safe and going home safely at the end of the day. So it's all about what we are doing and how we are doing it. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So in a nutshell, then that part sits almost basically in that design. We've got the construction space where we then look at the site safety, hygiene, what is happening there, all the documentation in place. We look at operational risk management, talking to the contractors, what are they doing, how are they doing it, what's the scope of work, how will they approach this type of job, and so forth. And then we've got the performance system where we see how they perform. Now, again, that's not the stick. How we use it is, if we see that a contractor is consistently going down, 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 then we engage more. And we say, what is happening over here? Why is this happening? How can we help? So the team is massively busy. We do lots of inspections on site, lots of just engaging with the contractor, talking to them, trying to understand what's happening, how processes work, how it fits in with our processes, and so forth. So in the end, it is about that project hazard management that now takes place right from this planning stage through. And that's kind of how the whole thing fits together. Some of the outcomes that we've experienced. In 2017, we had 25 projects on the go, and we had 27 notifiable events, notifiable to WorkSafe, which that thing is a little bit out of whack. Over time, we've got it down, and that's about 2 slides further. We've got it down to a sort of average between 4 and about 7 a year. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But the total projects, that big dip there, that is when funding was just pulled from us. middle of last year. And the projects dropped from just over 306, 312 projects to about 210, 215 projects, more or less. And it's currently still there. But the reporting and total events remained consistent. So the reporting part for us is extremely important. Regardless of what people report, whether it's a paper cut, whether they tripped over something, we just accept it. Let it all come in. It's fine. In the big picture sense, this is what it looked like from 2017. So that was the massive jump around 2020, 2021, when we had that boost, and that's where the total projects were sitting at. And you can see from that, so this flat part here, that's mostly where COVID influenced, but the rest of it is not significantly different from what happened over here to there. The reporting remained consistent. We check in on our contractors, those ones that we feel, hang on, you haven't reported anything for like 3 months, is that even possible? We go and have a conversation with them and see where we need to help and what we can do in that space to support them. And then this is the one about our notifiable events that I talked about earlier. Can we really get it down to zero? Probably yes, probably no. Things will happen. We work with people, we don't work with machines, we don't work with robots. So it's pretty hard to get it down lower if you think about what the wide variety of workers that we do, the context of that work. It's literally anything you can think of. It's wharves, airfields, runways, underground services, anything. So lots and lots and lots going on, really. What makes CHASNZ different? So there's a whole lot of stuff up there. A couple of things that I want to point out. You can all read that. We, as NZDF, are in the lead. So we lead this, because in 2016, if you remember, MB said, especially for government agencies, as a PCBU, you have an upstream duty. You need to lead by example. And that's what NZDF is trying to do through this. We drive better conversations with our contractors about planning and about risk. Right from the start, from that planning start, we are there with, and the question popped up at the back about the alliance. We also have an alliance. So in that design stage, the alliance does a lot of work for us. And we sit in on that process right from the start through all of the design gates. We question all the designs. Do things still slip through? Yes, it does. The Ohakia fuel farm is a pretty good example. They had to dig up a couple of things because the designs were just wrong. So some things were missed. Not necessarily in terms of health and safety, but just the overall project, which then affects health and safety because everyone is under stress. There's no money, there's no funding, the timeline is running out, and that just causes ongoing issues. CHASNZ also gives us a bit of a sense that we're meeting our legal obligations under Section 44 for officers of a PCBU. That's consistently the question that I get from leadership and from the Exec Health and Safety Committee, so CDF, VCDF, and so on. Are we meeting the legal requirements? And so we, on a continuous basis, go through what else do we need to do? How do we make sure that we meet those requirements? And then there's obviously the duty of care. Do we actually meet that? That's most important, probably. A lot of focus goes into consultation, cooperation, and just working with the contractors. That's a massive focus for us. Continuously engaging with them. So one thing that I should probably clarify, and I haven't said that earlier, with CHASNZ, we don't prescribe how the contractor should do their job, and that's something that Sue pointed out as well. We don't. We've done the research, we went through hundreds of documents, hundreds of court cases, looked at what the law says, looked at a whole heap of other stuff, and we went, this would be the best way to do it. Here's the minimum requirements. If you meet this, we should be okay. And I'm just using the word should be okay, because you only need one sharp lawyer at the other end and you're not okay. They just nitpick something and they go, well, you haven't done that. Or you've said this and it's out of context and bang, it all falls over. But you should be okay. So we're not getting into the space where we say, oh, hang on, to do this confined space job, you need to do it this way. We say, you tell us how you are going to do it. Here's the minimum requirements. Are you meeting these minimum requirements? And then we issue the permit. Then we do the checks afterwards. We go to site and we say, this is what your controls were. So let's look at those controls. Are they in place? And quite often, you would find, no, some of those controls are not in place. So that's another frustration for the contractors potentially sometimes, because then we shut down the job. Or we shut down the high-risk activity, rather. Not necessarily the entire job, the rest can carry on, but we shut down that high-risk part, which may affect the rest of it. So there's really, with this system, there's a good foundation that then supports the governance part of it, which is really important for defense. It supports our activities, and it also gets us and the contractors in the right mindset to make sure that that performance is up to standard. Because we want the job to run, but we want the job to run safely. We want people to go home safely at the end of the day, which sometimes can be a bit of a tall order. So in the end, CHASNZ is basically a rule set that we've put down there and said, here's the minimum requirements. Now, some of the successes, you can read through that over the past couple of years, and of just there's a much longer list if we really dive into it. We issued more than 17,800, they're probably now over 17,900 high-risk work permits. We're measuring something that's absent, because we can't say we would have had 10,000 notifiable events, or 2,000, or 5, or 1. We can't. It's just those things were not managed in the past. They were not. We just left it up to the contractor, and if the contractor managed it, perfect. And if they didn't, according to us, it was also perfect, until it went wrong. We've inducted just over 15,000 contractors coming and going. So the DEI induction, that's the overarching induction. Once a contractor has done that, they can work on any of our sites for the next 24 months. So they don't have to, say, work at a Hakia and then go to Linton, redo it again, and come back to, say, Devonport and do it again. You only do it once. And that's simply telling them, from our perspective, same as what Sue said earlier, what is on our site that can harm you, some of the expectations, and then in the hazard workshops, contractor will say, this is what we bring to site. We run through the hazard workshop, this is what could harm defense. Then we have SimOps meetings, simultaneous operations, at currently 5 of the camps and bases. We scale them up or scale them down as we need to, or as is required, simply because not all of the camps and bases are that busy with projects. So where it's really easy, don't have to run it, we know where it is, what's happening in terms of high-risk works. At some of the other camps and bases, there's a lot of deconfliction that needs to take place. There may be a crane doing a massively high lift while there's parachute training, or planes flying past, or all kinds of things. Just simple things like a parade. A road is closed, but there's a school, a primary school on site or next door. You close the road. Where are the kids going to go? How are the mums and dads going to pick up the kids? That kind of thing. So there's lots happening in that space. We've seen that significant reduction in notifiable events, consistent reporting of health and safety events. The one thing that is really important for us is supporting the contractors. Very important. So We engage with them, as I said. And then there's something that sometimes make a whole lot of people uncomfortable, and that is positive investigations. So we have run a couple of positive investigations as well. We're so focused on why things go wrong that we never focus on why have they gone right for 1,000 times. That's really important to us. We need to understand. And so my team and I are engaged in that as well. We had a Hagland crane demolished at Devonport, and that was one of the first ones that we did because it just went perfect. It wouldn't have, because the wharf had a I need to get it right, I think it had a 40-ton load limit. The crane truck that we brought on, 100 tons. And so if we did not have the hazard workshop and we haven't asked the question, then potentially some of our ships would not be operational because we would have just flattened the wharf. So hugely important that we get these things right. And then probably the last one, we do have challenges. We have old infrastructure, 1930s, 1940s, heaps of it. You find 11 kV cables, 50 mil underground, up to 3 meters underground, because everything is shifting and moving, and the new contractor decides, let's just bury this. Just 2 days ago, we found an 11 kV cable in a clay pipe underground, because that was the obvious place to push it through instead of dig something new. So they just pushed it through there. Lots and lots of unknown horizontal structures. Lots. We probably at Burnham at this point have about 60 cable strikes a week. Just don't know where they are. It's anything from comms to power. Power we mostly know. Comms, not. Some of them are live, some of them are not live. Contractor has gone to the point where they said, if we report every single one, that'll be all that we'll be doing. So we just report them once a week. But we're updating ArcGIS as we go. We've got a system that we're working on to record these as we find them. The problem with that is that we only know where we've struck it. We don't know where it came from, we don't know where it goes to. So that's a new challenge. We don't have money to do everything. And the very last one there, we did have, well, all of that obviously, but 2023, we did a review on CHASNZ. Because the leadership team and the exec asked, have we overcooked this or undercooked this? And we just had to do something about it. Engaged 2 external companies, and long story short, in the end, it was tweaking CHASNZ. No major changes, just tweaking. More clarification, more streamlining of processes, cutting out something here and there, and that was the end of it. So really straightforward and easy. Very last one, for those of you that may be interested, there's the website. If you jump onto that, every document that you find there is for free. Use it. If you want to use it, CHASNZ is on there, volume 1, volume 2. I'm unsure whether volume 4 is up there. That's our safety by design volume. But all the templates, everything. The changes, you're welcome to look at the changes that were made from the suggestions by those 2 external organizations. Those are uploaded there. And it's for free. If a small contractor can use it, please do so. That is me. Thank you. Thanks for listening to me.
So Rian, don't go anywhere.
Nope.
So Rian's got to shoot off because, as you saw from his massive convoluted diagram that Sue said looked like something from Star Wars, that he's a busy man, so he's got to get on a plane and go to one of those 9 locations somewhere and probably try and manage one of those million contractors he's got running around. So we've got a bit of time now. We've got about 15 minutes, which is really the opportunity to do some Q&A. So what we'll do in this during this time is, obviously, you can, if you've got questions for Rian, then fire away. But also as well, if you've got any questions from Sue's session, we can use some of this time to talk to both speakers before we break for lunch. So before we do that, just to remind everybody that we've got about 15 minutes, and then at 12 p.m. in 15 minutes time is lunch, and we like to be on time for lunch because we all want to eat. We don't want any hangry crowd. We don't want a riot this afternoon, so do lunch. And again, the only promise I want you to make for lunch is that at 5 minutes to 1, that you're back in the room and in your chairs, so we can get ourselves going for the final session in the afternoon, and so we can get you guys all off home in time before the Auckland traffic gets really bad. All right, so that's the way forward. So we'll use this opportunity. So I'll invite Rian and Sue to come up, and the floor's open. Are there any questions?
If you have any urgent projects coming up that do not allow for a 12-week time period to assess and everything, how would you arrange that?
Just ask the first part.
If you have like an urgent project
Yeah.
coming up, and you do not have a 12-week period to assess and go through the contract and everything else, how would you go about that?
Well, probably what we, and I'm thinking there's probably one or two that have gone that way, where it was an urgent project. We just squeeze everything as close as possible together. We work with the client with the contractor to produce their construction safety management plan, and we just sit with them. We've had I think it was the airfield in Oaxaca, where that was one of those that was just squeezed into a really short time frame. And we engaged with them and did it in kind of 4 weeks, I think, if I remember correctly. Can be done. Yep. The hard part for us is not to start the project unless the documentation is in place. Because if you do that, it all falls over. Have to have that in place for us. So there's clear-cut requirements, expectations, everything is out there, open, honest, and everyone knows exactly what to do. So we just jump on and help. That's why the team put in long hours.
And from a facilities management point of view, like if there's any reactive work and it can't wait 4 weeks and it just needs to be done overnight?
Yep, that can be done. So what I have not mentioned is that we apply CHASNZ to facilities management as well. So we've got a facilities management, safety management plan, a FMSMP, where for the others we've got a CSMP, a construction safety management plan. So each of them have a pre-written FMSMP already that we've signed off. So it's really easy to then just layer the jobs underneath that, because urgent stuff does happen middle of the night. We have one dock to manage permits during the week. They are not getting paid overtime, it's defense. So they don't work on weekends, they don't work after hours. So the next obvious question would be, so how do you run your permits? We let the facilities maintenance guys run the permit, and we upload the permit the next morning. Remember I said in the beginning, they're a PCBU. You've got responsibilities, run it. You know CHASNZ, run it. Run it according to CHASNZ. You know what safe systems look like. So run it that way. Tomorrow morning we'll discuss it and upload it. And if there's lessons to be learned, then we learn and we move on. Does that answer?
Yeah, we've got a hand at the back.
I was curious about the...
Stand up, please.
if you put requirements on contractors, it's a question somewhere between yourself and Sue. I think you can understand how you might navigate it if it's in the middle of the Venn diagram that Sue showed us. But I guess how do you manage things where your minimum requirements might be considered to overreach into subbies prescribed way of doing things, and is that how do you manage that?
So a couple of things going through my mind. First of all, as we work with people, that overreaching is a real problem. We have some of the docks that'll dive and keep diving. They're not comfortable enough to just say, okay, cool, you've told me that you will bring fully trained and qualified people on board. They will want to know where you've done your training and what is this training, and then who is this organization? Was this organization actually? And you go, stop. It can't go that far. So yes, that is a real problem for us. It's an ongoing conversation about what does overreaching look like and what does it not. So really hard to manage. But in the end, what we quite often do, if there's any gray area, we simply go, where does the money come from? Who pays this bill? And then generally it's us. So that's what we focus on. And then we have a conversation with the contractor. We quite often, I just yesterday addressed it with someone where the client, us, overreached and went right down to the subcontractor and had a discussion without involving the contractor or the subcontractor. And I said, guys, that can't happen. That's just muddling the waters. So it has to follow the flow.
Can I just make a comment? I'll use this one. So I do quite a bit of work in that critical hazard management space, and to my mind, that's where we really need to focus our efforts. And you know, it's about saying, what are the key things that need to be in place? Not all the peripheral stuff. And pretty much if you think about most critical risks, they probably have like 3 or 4 critical criteria that need to be in place. They're not that complicated. And they are the barriers that will control that risk. And it really is that permit to work kind of critical hazard control. Have you got 1, 2, 3? Yes, you have. Good. You're good to go. And I'm going to check that 1, 2, 3 has been implemented. And, you know, keeping it focused on those key things, as you say, not, oh, okay, now I want to see all the peripheral stuff that sits around it. And that's how you prevent your overreach. Yeah.
Definitely agree with you.
Any more questions? Sir with the beard?
Hey, just with regards to your positive investigations, does that include at the end of like major projects and that a project review? So we're looking at how the project went, you know, what was good, what was bad, where we can improve. Because I was looking at the diagram and it's took you through that, but you never really sort of went past that point.
Yep. So yes, it does. Second point, remember, defense is this complex animal that we work with. So we have defense commercial services, plus we've got a program management office. The program management office do this part afterwards with the alliance, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't involve the health and safety team. And so yes, definitely at the end of the project. What frustrates us quite often is that is then filed, and then the new project comes online and we make exactly the same mistakes going through it again. So I've been in conversations with Defence Commercial Services for the last 3 weeks exactly about that, because I said we use the CHIP scoring, we do these evaluations at the end. Where is it going? At some point, someone needs to put this up somewhere so that we can learn from it and and move on. Sadly, the positive investigations are also not linked to this. So that is the next part. I would like to say that we're probably still in embedding the system, not really further than that. A lot of our contractors, no, I'm saying it the wrong way. All of our contractors are currently on board with CHASNZ, and as soon we had a lot of pushback at the start, and as soon as they realize how we do it, how open, transparent, and so forth we are, and how we assist and help, then they take it on board, and it's taken a couple of years, and then usually they come back and say, really easy to use your system, let's crack on. So, but all of these things in the end still need to kind of come together. The other bit that I've mentioned during morning tea is that, and I've made mention of it earlier, we've got Army, Air Force and Navy, and they may directly engage a contractor and we engage contractors. So I'm working with those entities plus capability branch and MOD and so forth to bring CHESS a little bit closer so that there's one system for contractor management, because it's less confusion. Obviously less confusion for the contractor. Over here I can do this. I can work at 30 meters height without a permit. Why do I need a permit over here for over 1.8 meters? I really don't understand it. And then we have to always explain that part, but over here we didn't know. You work for Army, over here you work for us. But it's confusing because it's things are just not balancing out.
Couple of final questions, one at the front.
Just around the PCBU then, you've got your main contractor as PCBU, and then if they have subcontractors under them, from Sue's conversation, would they're all PCBUs in their own right, for their own specialties, but you have it that you sign on the main contractor that they're responsible for those? That they're...
Yep.
So let's just clarify. Everyone's a PCBU,
Yep.
right? Everybody. We're all PCBU. All the contractors, the client, everybody's a PCBU. The main thing is to think about who's a principal contractor. Because if you've got a client that has engaged another contractor to really act as the principal contractor, and I suppose this is one advantage of our regs, it clearly defines who is, and it's essentially the owner of the work or a third party that's been engaged to do the work. You guys just don't have that definition. So if you think about it, you go, okay, we're a government department, hires a construction company to run a project. They are effectively the principal contractor. They then hire subcontractors, and the relationship pretty much flows from there. And you think about what is each level influence and control. The client basically hands over the work, zero influence and control on a daily basis. The principal contractor controls the site, the coordination, the consultation, all that stuff. The individual contractors control their work. So that's how it works.
Yes.
Cascades down. Does that help?
Yeah, it was trying to get all the way into the conversation we were having earlier is about, you know, this is liability here and that, but then how does that work in line with WorkSafe? Like,
What I've just described is how it works, and WorkSafe have to fall into line.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. But the reality is that I have this conversation all the time. The regulator is not actually the arbiter. It's the courts. The regulator has an opinion on how they think the regs and the Act work, and they argue that opinion in court, and they prosecute and they da-da-da-da. But the reality is, it is what the courts say that is the actual position.
That's where our conversation was going there. Yes,
Yeah.
you don't have to have all these questions and a pre-qual or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then you've got WorkSafe coming and going,
I
no,
know.
we want all those
I know.
questions. And then, you know, do you stand there and go, actually, legally, you don't have to. So.
Well, yes. Yeah, yes, and you know, I've been in this situation where, you know, as I said, I've spent 15 years turning the regulators around, and we are at the point in Australia where most of the regulators go, oh, it was good for them when we did live in a world where principal contractors thought they had to basically regulate contractors, but the reality is they don't have a legal obligation, and we've had a big shift in Australia around this. And the regulators have to accept, and the decisions in New Zealand are the same, and say, actually, no, there isn't. And, you know, I had a client where, you know, a contractor's apprentice was killed. My client was the principal contractor. The regulator came and said, well, what did you do about all this stuff? Your overwhelming desire is to go, yes, I did all that stuff. And we just said we didn't do any of it, because we're not that duty holder and we don't have, and the regulator went, yeah, okay, that was the end of it. So it's a difficult tension.
Yeah, and just to give you some New Zealand context, so you're probably all aware that the current minister has made a submission to Cabinet about some changes in the safety system, and you're probably across those. One of the opportunities that's coming out of that is an opportunity for us to work with the regulator to write an approved code of practice for construction. We at CHASNZ have been advocating for CDM regulations in New Zealand for some years now. And our hope is that opportunity to draft some approved codes of practice can provide some clarity about these roles so that we can explain what the definition is of a client and what their key roles and responsibilities should be, define what the definition of a principal contractor is and define what their roles and responsibilities are, and so on and so forth, because that is needed and there currently isn't that clarity in the system.
We have Safe Work Australia issued some guidance. It was terrible, was really bad. So they tried to do it. As I said, it's been almost impossible for the regulators to wrap their head around this. No one is saying, and the problem is I think people interpret, you know, what I'm saying as you go, I don't care. I don't care what. No one is saying that. What we're saying is we need to have a relationship where each of us manages what we control so that we keep each other safe. And if that is the case, we then achieve good safety outcomes without all the crap that goes around it. So it's not about turning a blind eye. It's not about saying, I can just sidestep my obligations. It's saying make sure those obligations are in the right place. Each party understands them and meets them. And we get better safety outcomes, more productivity. You know, or focus on critical risk rather than all the plethora of stuff that goes around it. You know, asking about, how do you consult, how do you do, whatever. So don't go and look at Australia for a different. Safe Work Australia tried, but it didn't work very well.
That's good. Right, I'm going to wrap that Q&A session up. Do hold your questions because you will have the opportunity. You won't have the opportunity to pick Rian's brain because he does have to leave us, but the rest of us will be on a panel towards the back end of the day where you can get all these things off your chest. Also as well, there will be the opportunity, if you've got burning questions after the event that we don't deal with in the room, email us. What we'll do is we'll get those questions to the speakers, and within our resource page where we share the videos and all the presentations, we'll put the Q&As on there. So every question you've got in your mind, there is an opportunity to have that question answered one way or the other, so don't worry about it. Right, it's lunchtime. So if you remember what I said, all right, 1:05, please, back in the room.